everyone, happy Friday. I'm Hannah, archivist with Deadwood History, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the early fire departments in our northern Black Hills communities and show you some things that we have in our archives collection. So most people know about the 1879 fire in Deadwood. It took out 300 buildings, but it wasn't the only fire like that, unfortunately, and we have some photos here of an 1888 fire in Central City. This photo up here was actually taken before the fire, and then the photo underneath was taken 5 months after the fire. So you can see some buildings have been rebuilt, but there's still a lot of space that's just empty because everything was burned down. So fires like this were unfortunately pretty common with hastily built buildings. If a fire started, everything went up in flame. So to kind of combat that, a lot of the community started to have volunteer hose companies. And hose companies, you needed more than one per city. You might think, oh, it's a very small city, but unfortunately with railroad tracks and possibly mine shafts and just not being able to get somewhere quickly, you needed neighborhood hose companies. And they were made up of several different volunteers, and at that time, the late 19th century, they were all men. By the early 20th century, we did have honorary female members. Usually they had donated equipment or money. They were made up, and it was their neighborhood, so they felt a strong connection and were on call at all times to go out to a fire. And we kind of have this image of early fire departments in the bucket brigade, filling a bucket, passing it down a line of people, and that was something they did. But the most important equipment that any hose company could have was a hose cart. And if you're lucky enough to come out, you can see a real hose cart at our Days of 76 museum in our carriage gallery. But we do have some photos in our collection to kind of show you the different types of hose carts. Hopefully a hose company would have multiple carts. Sometimes they only had one. But you can see here in this picture, this is also from Central City, but 1905. This was the Farnham store in Central City, and this is after the fire. It's a pretty small cart. You can hardly see it behind those two gentlemen, and it was still useful. It was a cart that could fit into different places if the streets were very tight together or they didn't need a lot of hose. So that was fine. It worked well, but you can see down here in this photo a larger cart, and that is really the size of carts you would see at most hose companies in the northern Black Hills. We don't have a lot of water available, so you needed a lot of hose to get the water to where you needed it. And as you can see in that photo, it's men pulling it. Ideally, you'd have a horse pull your cart. They were heavy. Once you added water, they were even heavier. But rapid response often required men to just go and pull the cart to where it needed to be. And that gave rise to competitions and races to really prepare, keep the volunteers fit, keep them prepared for a real fire so they'd know what to do. And we have here some photos of different hose teams, slightly different from hose companies. You could be a member of a hose team and not a member of the hose company. If you were really strong and really fast, they were happy to take you. This is an unidentified team. We think that it's probably lead somewhere, but we're not positive. And down here we have the Alert Hose Company, hose team, and that was in lead. And as you can see, they have specific costumes that were waterproof and fireproof, and they used those to race. And races were pretty popular. In fact, in 1888, Deadwood hosted an international competition, and people and teams from Europe and all over North America actually came and competed. And two teams from Deadwood, a Chinese team and a Deadwood Hose Company team, were the victors. So they were the universal champions for 1888 competition. Races were great for training and all of that, but they were also important because you got prize money. And again, these were volunteer organizations, and you needed money to get your equipment and to get your uniforms. Like I said, these are hose team uniforms. They had parade uniforms, and usually when they responded to a fire, they just showed up in their regular clothes. So they needed at least 2 uniforms if they were a member of the company and the team. And so fundraisers, obviously races, but if you weren't the fastest team, you weren't going to win. So the other fundraisers that they had were dances, concerts, just donations from the wealthy citizens of the town. That's where we have our honorary female members often, and sometimes bake sales. And we know this because of newspaper articles, but also we are lucky enough in our collection to have 2 minute books from different companies. We have the Pioneer Hook and Ladder book down here, which you can see is a little fragile. And we also have the Deadwood Hose Company minutes book. And this minutes book is only for the year 1887, so it's pretty sizable. They responded to a lot of fires, had a lot of meetings. And the Pioneer Hook and Ladder actually goes from 1886 all the way to 1890, so a little bit more time in that book. But in the books, you're going to have your meeting minutes, of course, and you'll have your membership information, so you can often find your ancestor if they happen to be a member of the group. You also have your fundraising and your financial information. And we're finding with this Deadwood Hose book, the meetings might have run a little bit long and a little bit boring because the secretary did a lot of doodling. Usually not anything to do with fires, usually something to do with women. So meetings got a little boring for him, I guess. With that one, you are able to come into the Hark and look at it yourself. But with our Pioneer Hook and Ladder, as I mentioned, it's very fragile, you can see that. It was the unfortunate victim of a flooded basement. So friendly reminder, if you have stuff in your own collection, make sure it's somewhere where it won't get flooded or wet because it'll fall apart. But very recently, we're very lucky, we were able to scan every single page, and that will be available for anyone who wants to come and look at it on our research computers here at the Hark. So it's here, and we know who's in it, and you can actually see the pages now, since we really do try to avoid handling it. And down here, we just have a little booklet of bylaws. The bylaws were generally written in the meeting minutes book at some point, but as they expanded, they did start to print them, so every member could have a printed bylaws book, so they knew if they were doing something wrong or right or whatnot. So I've kind of shown you just overarching, these are the things that belong to the fire departments, the hose companies, but we always like to bring it back to an individual if we can, and we are really lucky to have a lot of items from Joseph Panansky. If I butchered that name, I do apologize. He was the fire chief of the Pioneer Hook and Ladder, 1905 through 1907, and we have his photo here in his uniform, which is great. We always like when we can have them in uniform. And we have membership cards and everything, but we came across what is really the largest certificate I've ever seen for membership. This was for 15 years of service. Or not 17 years of service actually, and it was given to him in 1915. So very large. They were very proud of their membership. A lot of members only lasted a few years, but he was there for at least 17 years, so that's really exciting. Like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg of the items that were donated to us regarding Joe. So if you're interested in more information about our fire departments, early fire departments, we'd like to invite you to visit our brand new online exhibit. There's going to be a link to the exhibit in the description for this video, but it's deadwoodhistory.omeka.net, and you're going to get to see things that I didn't show you here. So a brand new set of photos, brand new set of documents. So that's really exciting, and of course that's only a small amount of the items, just like this is a small amount of items. So you can always give us a call here at the Hark at 605-722-4800.